when you're talking about coming in trying to do things right, most chiefs that are trying to come in and do things right, quite honestly, and it just is what it is. Those departments don't pay much money. I made when I took that first chief's job, I made less money taking a chief's job than I did as a detective where I was working at. But for me, it was about the opportunity. It was about the opportunity. How many times in my life am I going to get an opportunity to become a police chief and have an effect on a community near where I grew up that I know needs that help?
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What's going on, my good people? Welcome to the latest installment of the Black and Blue Podcast. My name is Dale, and I'm the host of this program. Thank you all, first-timers and veterans of the show alike, for tuning in. I appreciate you and your support. Please continue to support by heading over to the Black and Blue Podcast YouTube channel and smashing those like and subscribe buttons. And if you're listening to me on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to rate the show 5 stars if you deem it worthy. Lastly, please check me out on my various social media pages for more content. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, now, so my guest today is the chief of police of a town just outside of the windy city of Chicago, Illinois. Everybody, let's give a warm Black and Blue welcome to Hazelcrest, Illinois Police Chief Mitchell Davis. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. Honored to be here. I appreciate being part of your broadcast.
I appreciate you coming on. How's everything out there in Hazelcrest, Illinois today?
You know what? It's been quiet. The weather here in the Chicagoland area is above normal, which was always a good thing in October. So we get a little bit of comfortable weather still.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, so I mentioned in the monologue there that Hazelcrest, Illinois is just outside of Chicago. Tell us a little bit about Hazelcrest, Illinois.
Hazelcrest is right outside the south side of Chicago, and it's pretty much an extension of the south side of Chicago, just like any other major metropolitan area. If you're not from here, you don't know where Chicago ends and other contiguous suburbs begin, and it takes just a couple minutes to get to Chicago from Hazelcrest. And once again, this is just basically an extension of the south side of Chicago. A little bit different, but we have some of the same challenges that exist in the city of Chicago. Our population here is about 14,000, and bedroom community. We've got CEOs that live in our community, and we got folks that are on Section 8 that live in our community. So it's just a great cross section of society, and it's an honor to be the chief here.
Absolutely. And how large is the police department there?
We have 36 sworn, and we have 12 civilians that work here in the police department. Okay.
And how long you been there?
I've been here in Hazelcrest for 6 years as their chief. This is my 30th year in law enforcement, and it's actually my 12th year actually as a police chief. The other 2 departments that I was police chief for were in the same south suburban area of Chicago, and which is where I grew up at, also in the south suburbs of Chicago. And my entire 30 years in law enforcement has been spent in this south suburban area of Chicago.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you. You grew up in Chicago, then, huh? So you were a Chi-Lite.
I absolutely. I grew up. I was born in Chicago and moved to the south suburbs when I was about 9 years old, and been here ever since. And went to college in Chicago, so I've always been here in Chicago. So I enjoy it. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we couldn't get you out to like New York or Boston or nothing like that, huh?
Nah, I'm good. You know what? If I go anywhere, my wife has got me committed to moving somewhere warm.
Right.
But even with that, I'm still not. This is where everything is for me, so it's kind of
Yeah.
difficult for me to move.
Yeah. I was going to talk a little bit later about the Chicago, the Illinois weather. We talked a little bit about me off air that I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, and we got those winters too off of Lake
Yeah.
Erie and all that, and then I moved out here in the '80s to California, and I never tried to go back, never tried to go back to Columbus.
Yeah,
So yeah, I know a little bit about the snow, but I'm good out here in Cali, so
I can
you can have
imagine.
the snow.
I can imagine.
You can
January
have that snow.
when that wind chill in January hits 35, 40 below, it can be challenging.
Man, I don't know how you do it. Much props to all you officers out there that handle police work out there in those horrid conditions of the snow and extreme conditions. That's yeah. Props to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you grew up there in the Chicago area. Had you always wanted to be in law enforcement? What was your journey like to be in law enforcement?
So law enforcement for me was absolutely not on my radar. Was never even a consideration for me. And I say that God brought me here to into law enforcement, and I based that upon my path getting here and the exposure that I've had since then. As I mentioned before, I went to school here in Chicago. I went to Illinois Institute of Technology, which is one of the top engineering schools in the world. And I was a computer programmer as a student there, and I actually worked as a computer programmer for about 8 years prior to going into law enforcement. And when I got into law enforcement, it was once again, I believe it was all God. I actually got fired from my job as a computer programmer. I was working for a sporting goods company, an internationally known sporting goods company that had been bought out, and this was back in the '80s. And when they got bought out, just got married, had just had a kid, just bought a house, and I needed income. And went to DePaul University, had a minority job fair. Went to DePaul University, and I just need to support my family. That's my mindset. Handing out resumes, and I got called by a police department called Park Forest, which is once again a South Suburban Police Department. There was three positions that they were hiring for. When they gave a test, it was probably about 500 people that took the initial test, and I was number two out of the three people that they hired to take that initial position. That was back in 1991, and 30 years later, here I am. So I
Yeah,
believe it was all God bringing me here.
indeed. That was a police officer position that you tested for.
Yes, it was a patrol position. Like I said, I had never had any aspirations of being the police, but they were paying decent money. It
Right.
was an opportunity for me, and I just went with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have thought that maybe you would have tried to apply for an IT position or something like that, and then once you were working there, you say, "Hey, this police job is pretty cool." But no, you went straight all the way, huh? You went for it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, absolutely, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah. So how were those early days? Since you had never thought about it, you were in a total different situation. As a computer programmer, and then you're thrust into this paramilitary like lifestyle that we're in law enforcement. How was that transition for you?
So it was interesting. So I was 20, 27, 28 years old when this happened in my life, and for me, having been a black man, being a black man and growing up in the Chicagoland area, I had encounters with law enforcement. You hear driving while black. I had those experiences on several occasions, and I didn't dislike the police, but I just had never thought about being the police. So for me now having that career change, I wanted to be that officer that folks in black communities want their officers to be. That was kind of my vision when I came into law enforcement, is I wanted to be that person, and that's kind of what I strive to be. And uh, it came with some rude awakenings, both from the police side and from the community reception side. But I still, so I may have changed my ideology about it. I wasn't so naive about it, but wanting to be that officer that our communities want officers to be has never stopped being one of my goals.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was kind of my route to getting into police work as well. I started first thinking about it like in the early '90s when Rodney King happened out here in L.A. and I started thinking, hey, I want to be one of those officers that Black and brown and Asian and whoever communities don't have to worry about. I want to be that change that we all wanted to see. So that's when I first started thinking about it. But I had to go to college route first before I went in law enforcement. But that was my first inkling in my head that I wanted to get into law enforcement too. So yeah, sometimes it's those paths that something happens and you want because I was thinking about journalism at the time. I don't know, maybe this podcast will kind of give you that idea. I was thinking about journalism at the time, but yeah, and then that happened, and like you said, God puts it in front of you.
Absolutely, and that ideology of being that officer now, I've been blessed right now to be in a position where I actually and can be implementer of change. I'm at that level right now where, the positions and the titles outside of just being police chief here, the organizations and the leadership positions that I hold within the profession now actually literally put me on the front line of making change. And so, that's what I'm most excited about. That it's been truly a blessing that, from the very beginning, having had that mindset to being, that's why I say I know it's nothing but God that has placed me here for such a time as this. So,
yeah, for real. And then, so you talking about first you were a computer programmer. I mean, that's some pretty good smarts right there, obviously. Did you ever get a chance in your career to kind of use that degree for anything?
So it worked out because, once again, back in the early 90s, computers were still developing. They were nowhere near, where desktops are. Software and things like that there's nowhere near what it is. Coming from a technical background, I actually was able to be forward thinking and push some things within our department to move towards automating things that we were just historically used to doing manually. So yeah, I was actually able to do those things, and then when they were implementing computer related things back then, once again, a lot of folks didn't have a lot of experience. Today, everybody, you got your phones, you got your laptops, so it's not foreign for almost everybody to work with computers. But back then, wasn't that way, and some people just shied away from it, and so I was able to help bring folks along, and I've always done that throughout my career. Automation and technology has always been at the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with being a police officer and being around other police officers is that we're not one for change,
right?
Especially in the technology realm, and so sometimes getting the old timers to want to go from handwriting a report to even just doing it on the computer, and then my department a while back we used to have something called an iPack, was back then was kind of like an iPad, and we had to log every stop on that. Everybody was pushing back on that, and then now to today, we got the body cams and all that. Just technology moving all that forward.
Absolutely, and it's good to be able to see that evolution.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I think I was around before, not before, but after handwriting reports, but. In the academy, they make you handwrite reports, and then when you get out and you're doing it on the computer, why are they making me handwrite these reports? Well, so
yeah, absolutely.
I take that back because I was just telling a trainee just the other day. I was writing a citation out for it, not a traffic citation, but I was citing out a juvenile. I'm an SRO right now,
okay.
And so we caught him with some stuff, so I had to to cite him out to his parents. And I messed up a court date, and you just can't scratch out the court date on a citation. You gotta redo it because they'll kick back the citation. So I was telling them, okay, so now when you go to the academy, this is why they're harping on making sure your memos, everything is straight, because you just can't scratch it out. You got to do it perfect.
Absolutely.
So it's pain in the butt, but you got to do what you got to do. Yeah, it's a legal document for real. For real, it is. So, all right. So, tell me a little bit about your career when you started out. You said you were patrol at your first department. What was your career progression? Excuse me, there at that department, and then moving on to another department.
So I started out, as everybody else, we start off in patrol, and actually was kind of interesting. Once I got into law enforcement, and once again, I'm in a suburban police department. I loved where I was at. It was a very high functioning police department, had a lot of amenities, and just a great department to work for. But a couple years in, and it just happens this way with folks, especially when you're around a large municipality. Quite often you'll get, visions of grandeur saying, you know what, I'm going to go work for the big police department. And a
Yep.
few years in to
Grass ain't
after
always greener,
working there,
right?
absolutely. Well, a couple years in, I tested for Chicago Police Department. And the leadership in the department that I was working for, I guess they thought I was doing a good job. So they gave me an incentive to stay. They put me in the detective division. And I spent
Yeah.
the next 7 years in the detective division. I did, the good thing about working for a smaller department is the diversity in what you're being exposed to. So
Yes.
if I worked
Yes.
for Chicago and I was a detective, I'd be a burglary detective or a homicide detective, whatever. It would be, you would have to do one thing. Well, in my department, I had to do everything. So I
Yep.
did financial crimes, I did burglaries, I did homicides, I did drugs. So it was great to be able to have that diverse exposure. I was a juvenile officer. Didn't have SROs, but what we have in a lot of schools in the area is called policeman officers, which is they're officers in the school, but it's not through the police department. It's basically a side job, and you work for the school district while you're working there, and you still work your job on the streets normally. But
Okay.
I did that for 27 years throughout my career, and being in investigations, I had a level of success there. I was a dare officer. I taught gang classes, and just got exposed to a lot of great things, and people that they had been asking me, hey, you need to take the promotion exam. Well, the protocol in that department and a lot of departments is that when you get a promotion, you got to start all over again. First of all, you got to go
Mm-hmm.
back into patrol, and when you got to go back into patrol, and you got to start at the bottom rung. And so, because I loved being in detectives, I wouldn't take the promotion exam. And for several rotations, I wouldn't take it. And finally, they came to me and they're like, look, you need to take the promotional exam. And so, about 9 years into my career, I took the promotional exam and I actually scored high enough where I got promoted. And during that ninth year, I got promoted to the equivalent to, or in most departments, to a sergeant's level. And I was there up for a couple months. And I got a phone call from a friend who I went to high school with. As I told you, I grew up in the South suburban area. My friend got elected mayor in one of the towns that fed into our high school, adjacent to where I grew up at. And the department, just quite honestly, the department was corrupt. The department was corrupt, and they needed to clean house. And he asked me, he says, I need somebody that I can trust to be my police chief. And mind you, I just told you I'd only been a supervisor for a couple months. But I'm a glass half full guy, and I knew the bad shape that that department was in, and I knew the community, and I figured that I couldn't do any worse than the people who were doing wrong by those folks that lived in that community were doing. So I prayed on it, talked to folks that I knew every aspect of law enforcement, judges, I knew public defenders, state's attorneys, other officers, and people told me to go for it. And my chief at the time at the department that I was working at, he said, hey, I got your back. I know what you're going to go through when you get over there. And if you choose to go through with it, I'm behind you. It's for you to help you with the process. So 10 years in, took my first chief's job. We were able to do some great things in that community. An underserved, once again, my mindset is that the most challenged and impoverished communities deserve the same police services as the most affluent communities. And the
Yes.
department that I came from, as I mentioned, was a great foundation for me and showed me how things were supposed to be done. So I took those resources and that mindset to this impoverished department, and we were able to make changes, man. We did some great things there, and I ended up losing my job there because, as a police chief, every 4 years when a new mayor comes in, you stand it, it
Yep.
doesn't mean you did something wrong. It's just they might want to
At
bring their
will.
own person in. And
Yep.
that happened with me. And I ended up being a police chief I worked as a school liaison officer for several years. I took some lumps in that first chief's job, and I didn't know that I wanted to be a chief again. So I worked as a school liaison officer for several years, and then I got a call about 8 years ago. There was a department in our area that made international news. Another impoverished department that had just been just did some things they should not have done, and it got them in the international news. And they asked me to come in and straighten out the department, and brought in a guy with me, and we came in and we got rid of the folks that needed to leave. We brought in folks that were with our program, and we were able to turn that department around. And I stayed there for a couple years, and when I left, he became the chief, so that continuum was still there with what we were working on, and that's how I landed here in Hazelcrest. And been here now for 6 years, and it's been a blessing being here. And here now, I'm the president of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. I'm the first Black president in the 80-year history of the organization. It's an honor, but I don't take it lightly. The governor here in Illinois has appointed me to be the chair of the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, which is our post here in Chicago, in Illinois. I'm the chairman of
Mm.
that. I'm on the board of directors for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. I'm on the board of National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. So I wear a lot of hats right now, and the experiences that I've had, I believe once again is God preparing me for where I'm at right now, because the things that have happened when
Yeah.
George Floyd was murdered, that was not new to me. I had developed classes where I've been traveling the country teaching about bias and change in the culture of law enforcement that I, as a Black man, thought needed to happen. So when George Floyd was murdered,
Yep.
it kind of thrust me into the spotlight because so many people knew I was already fighting that fight. So and then with the legislation, the historic legislation that was just passed here in Illinois with criminal justice reform, talking about our profession pushing back. It was a lot of pushback, but
Hmm.
a lot of
Yep.
the change, all the changes aren't perfect, but reform needed to happen, and it needs to happen, and not everybody feels that way.
Right. Right. Going back to talking about, your first chief's job and then your second chief's job, those were troubled departments. It's interesting that you mentioned that. Another chief that I've had on the show a couple times, I'm sure you heard of Chief Jason Armstrong. He was at Ferguson, Missouri
Yes.
PD, and I think he's moved on to another, I think Apex or something like that PD now. Anyway, he mentioned that once too, that us as Black men in leadership positions, we don't get those first jobs at primo departments. They're always, departments that are troubled for whatever reason. What's your thoughts on that? Is that, I mean, that's kind of been your experience.
So yeah. So what happened? Well, so I'm in agreement with that, but let me put it in another context. So I'm absolutely in agreement with that, because those who don't look like us, they'll take those jobs, but they'll take them for other reasons. So what
Yeah.
like the department, the first chief's job that I had, there were white guys that was running that department, but they were still. I mean, they're just using it as their toy, and that's how the department got.
Hmm.
And they're hiring people who got no business being hired, uh, and the community doesn't know. They just know that they aren't getting the services, but they don't know all the things that are going on behind those doors. So they'll take those jobs if they're of that mindset,
Yep.
and they'll abuse the department, and nobody, nobody. Worst thing, I'll just quit. I'll just move on somewhere, and that those things happen. They just take advantage of those apartments. But when you're talking about coming in trying to do things right, most chiefs that are trying to come in and do things right, well, quite honestly, and it just is what it is. Those departments don't pay much money. I made, when I took that first chief's job, I made less money taking a chief's job than I did as a detective. where I was working at. But for me, it was
Wow.
about the opportunity. It was about the opportunity. How many times in my life am I going to get an opportunity to become a police chief and have an effect on a community near where I grew up that I know needs that help, and I see what's happening. So it was a
That
leap.
part.
It was literally a leap of faith for me. And quite. And once again, it is what it is. A lot of chiefs that don't look like us aren't willing to do that for our communities, and that
Yes.
that's what I see the reality to be. And we do that because we're doing it because we want to make these communities right. And we get blessed as a result because we go into difficult situations as professionals who want to do the right thing, and people are like, "Wow, when you walked in, it was like this, but when you left, it was like this." So it gives
Yes.
us a bit of credibility from everybody to say that we had the nerve and the courage to go into these departments and to go in and be productive in spite of how it may have been historically.
Facts. Facts. Appreciate that. Appreciate that answer. So, you mentioned that you got some sort of pushback from being a police officer when you first started out. Was that kind of like from the people you came up with, from the family? What was that journey like for you when you first got into law enforcement, all the way up to now?
Well, no, you know what? My family's always been behind me. Like I said, I didn't grow up in we hated the police type family or anything like that. But we did that transition. Moved there. When I first moved there, we were one of the first black families in our neighborhood. And
Mm,
now that community is one of the highest crime communities in the state of Illinois. And there's a lot of reasons why that evolution took place, but with that comes a changing encounter with law enforcement. Because first of all, you have a certain encounter being the only black family in the neighborhood. You have a certain kind of encounter, and then
yeah.
as the department changes or as the town changes, then you have a different type of encounter with them. So I didn't get pushback from my family. Primarily, I just in the community, just I was just naive. I'm just thinking that I'm a black guy, I'm coming in here, I want to do the right thing. I'm treating you right. I'm being respectful to you, and everybody just don't like the police. And so
Right.
that was just a wake up call, and I haven't changed the fact of what I'm doing, but I'm tempered in how I do it, and I know, I'm not. I used to get heartbroken a lot. I guess is the best way to put it, because my
Mm,
intentions were to do the right thing, and when people didn't receive me trying to do the right thing, uh, it would break my heart. And where's this
yeah.
coming from? I'm trying to be the guy that you want, and so moving forward is interesting because as I mentioned, this past year, uh, the Illinois Black Caucus presented a bill it's now law. It's called the Safety Act, and it's sweeping reforms in law enforcement. And during that process, I got a phone call asking me, "Hey, we need you to be involved in this process." I was not the president of the Illinois Chiefs Association at the time. I was the vice president, but they know me personally, so they asked me to be a part of the process. And with my being the chairman of the Training and Standards Board, I needed to represent them as well. So I was kind of interjected into that process on a couple ways. Well, there was a coalition of folks, and there still is a coalition of folks that represent law enforcement in this whole legislative process. That coalition consists of the Illinois Chiefs Associations, three different factions of the FOP, and the Sheriff's Association. And I guess like the best way to say it is that the Illinois Chiefs weren't always on the same page as the FOP and the Sheriff's Association and our
Okay.
beliefs. And uh, quite honestly, some folks in the room made it quite clear up front. We want nothing to do with any type of police reforms.
Mm,
And my uh, what I would always say is that look, reforms are going to happen. The legislators are going to do what their constituents want them to do. We can either be victim of change or we can be partners in change. Are we going to get everything we want? Absolutely not. But to try to draw that line in the sand is not going to do us any good as a profession. But I've learned that some people will do things against their own best interest,
mm-hmm.
just for the sake of maintaining the status quo. And I talk about culture when I do my training culture, and that culture that is uh, a result the slave catchers, the enforcing Jim Crow laws, the war on drugs, and all those things
Hmm.
that were forced upon law enforcement to put upon mostly communities of color. That's why Black folks feel the way they feel. And so
Right.
I just honestly believe that sharing our experiences as Black police officers with our colleagues, that those colleagues who get it because of the relationships that we have with them, they'll receive it properly. But that pushback that I was talking about and that you just asked me about again, I found through this whole legislative process comes from two different extremes. They come from folks in our profession as law enforcement professionals that, like the guy said, we want nothing to do with reforms. Things are okay
Hmm.
the way they are right now. But I also found out, especially most recently, I also found out that there are some folks that are some Black folks who I was sitting on a panel with, and there was a young lady who was moderating the panel, and I was the only law enforcement type person on the panel. The others were attorneys and things to that effect. And my conversation is not what most people expect from a law enforcement person. I'm speaking for the community
Yep.
and for law enforcement and for Black folks on both sides and equity and everything that has. So my conversation is a little different. I was sharing some of the other people on the panel were like, wow, I've never heard, it's just refreshing to hear enforcement who have these views. And this moderator basically said that, you know what, the stuff you said was cool, Chief, but I ain't trying to work with the police in any under any circumstances.
Regardless. Yep.
So when you have people at both ends of those spectrum, that if you're trying to move forward and folks are just stuck where they are, you got to leave them where they are and work with who you can.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's tough when, just like you said, that person said, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I got those same feelings, but because you're wearing that uniform and that badge, I don't want to work with you. I mean, what can you do? I mean,
Yeah,
what can you do?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Got to know
that's
when to cut your
unfortunate.
losses. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and like you said, you can only work with who you can, and hopefully there's more of those people that you can work with that you can get through, through the mud and all that. How's not deforming, but defunding the police? How's that sort of affected your community over there? Has it kind of reached you in any capacity?
You know what? It has not. It has not. And so for me, it's kind of been, once again, because of the positions that I hold and being out in the media and out in the public so much, I try to use and I share whenever I talk about defunding the police. I always start out with my definition and my perception of it. And for me, for folks that say defunding the police, I look at it as reallocation of resources, not getting rid of the
Right.
police so much. There are those who want the police to be gone, and with those folks, I say, okay, give me an alternative. If you don't, it'd be great
Yeah.
if you didn't need our services, but you do. So with defunding, I talk about reallocation, and then I follow it up by saying, at least here in the state of Illinois, defunding happened a long time ago, but it wasn't defunding of the police; it was defunding of social services. Back in the late '90s, early 2000s, mental health. Homelessness services, substance abuse service, all those social service resources, they were defunded. And what happens in society when things get defunded, stuff gets thrown on police. Now we got CIT training, which is true. I'm not we should have training to deal with folks who are in episode. We should have those trainings, but there are other folks out there who are better equipped to deal with these things than we are, and they get thrown on us. And they defunded those services, but when they put those responsibilities on law enforcement, they didn't give us the money they were saving by defunding them. We had to operate
Hmm.
within the means that already existed with law enforcement. So now that the tide has changed, and now people are saying, well, you all shouldn't be dealing with those things. Well, we said that up front, but we do what we do because that's the professionals that we are.
Right.
Now they're talking about taking those things off our plate, but now they want to take money away from us. Well, you all never gave us money to deal with these
Yeah.
things. Hazelcrest, I got 2, 3 squad cars out there. My older squad cars, I got 2 or 3 of them that's got almost 200,000 miles on
Mm.
community, but we're not a community that can just go out that we want. So taking money away from us would absolutely have an effect just on the day-to-day operations on us being able to serve the people that live in our community. So it has not affected us. We have a tremendous administration here that does a great job. Once again, rich community that's got all new, every year we're getting new squad cars, but we got great officers here and a great administration that makes sure that we have the things that we need to be able to serve our community.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to when you were talking about all these services that were thrust upon the police because they were defunded, I was just talking to my son about that the other day. We're talking about back in the day, we used to have after-school programs, and when those went by the wayside, all those kids, what happened to them? Now they out running the streets because their parents are out working, and they didn't have an outlet. Yep. So what are they doing? They out there causing
here in
havoc.
Illinois,
Yep.
the largest mental services institutions are the jails.
Right.
There's buildings all around the state of Illinois that are sitting vacant. They used to have hundreds and hundreds of people where they offer resources to them. They're just sitting there vacant. And now the most of those folks are getting service when they get locked up. And most of the things they get locked up for as a result of mental illness issues. And we end up
Yes.
having to deal with them. And they get locked up and they get put right back out on the street. And it's that revolving door. So, until we take you can talk about the police all you want, and absolutely there's things that we need to change. I'm one of the greatest cheerleaders of that, changing that culture to be equitable for everybody. But until we address these societal issues such as mental illness, homelessness, substance abuse, we've got to hit those things head on, and that will take so much off our plate. And it'll help society as a whole. There's a saying that I heard somebody saying that when things are better for everybody, things are better for everybody. And when we start operating that way, that's when we're going to start moving forward with great strides.
I agree. Facts right there. Facts right there. And then another thing that's been a result of all this is officers leaving departments, through attrition and other reasons, but we're not able to backfill those positions because of funding, or just nowadays, a lot of people don't even want to be police officers. Are you seeing a lot of that in your communities out there that in the Chicago area, that people don't want to be police officers like they did back in the 90s and early 2000s?
Absolutely. So I sat on a panel about a week ago. I sat on a panel and for elected officials in the state of Illinois, and they were talking. Folks are so the legislators. Once again, we just had this sweeping criminal justice reform bill, and there were people that were attacking the legislators, saying that because of this bill, nobody wants to be the police again. We can't get people to apply to be law enforcement officers, and they really went in on them. Well, when I spoke, I kind of shared with them that we were having issues getting people being the police before this year. It didn't just start this year. We've been having that issue for some years now.
Yeah.
And, they talk about, well, all the good officers are retiring because of this criminal justice reform bill. And I share with them that, what, there's a couple of different types of officers that are retiring as to criminal justice reform. There's officers who never should have been in the police in the first place, who are doing things they got no business doing. And then there are those who might not be bad officers. They just don't want to change. And they've got enough time where they say, what, rather me go through these changes, I'm just going to go on about my business. And God bless them. We appreciate their time and their service in the community. But there are some folks who are leaving because they can't do the things that they're used to doing on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And those folks, some of those folks, they needed to go. So, yes, absolutely, we are having challenges finding people to apply. But for me, I talk about this as well. It's a time of challenge, but we need to, or I am going to look at it as a time of opportunity as well. With that paradigm shift that has to take place. If we're talking about making reforms, let's make reforms on how we recruit. Let's actively recruit, and instead of looking for the person, they're asking you, have you ever been in a fight before? Are you tough enough to be a police officer? I don't need somebody to be tough. I need somebody first and foremost that can empathize with those that they serve, so that they can. So no matter who you're dealing with, you might not agree with what they're doing. If you learn about their circumstances, you'll deal with them differently. I need somebody who can communicate, and I need somebody who can problem solve. If you're able to do those things, I can teach you how to defend yourself. I can teach you how to shoot. I can teach you how to protect others. But if you don't have those those characteristics, those fundamental character traits that are needed to interact with somebody on a positive basis, those are the things that we have to start looking for when it comes to individuals.
No doubt, no doubt. But on the flip side of that, we also talk about when you go through, background processes and all those sorts of things, when they talk about, say, like growing up on the south side of Chicago or what have you ever been in a fight? Do you know anybody who's been in a gang? And some of us applicants, half the people I ran with in school were in gangs. That doesn't mean I did it, but some of those things are disqualifying. And we need to sort of think about those things as well, that, the environment.
That's that paradigm shift.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That this applicant was in.
So that's cultural differences. And that's why it's important that, leaders such as yourself, that's why it's important that your voice be heard. And, when I gave my speech at the inaugural dinner about a month ago for being the first Black president for the Illinois Chiefs Association, I talked about the importance of being the first Black chief. And I shared with him, I said, because whenever I talk about it, I always say I'm the first Black chief. That's the president. I'm the first Black president. And I know that there are folks out there. Why does he always say that? What's the big deal? What's the big deal about being the first Black president? And that's what my speech was revolved around. And it's exactly what you just talked about. We bring a different viewpoint. It's not a wrong viewpoint. It's just different. But it's important that our viewpoint is heard, because it needs to be taken into consideration. Because if you're looking through one lens to service the people that are looking through a whole nother lens, that's where conflict is. And that's how things have historically been in our profession. The law enforcement has historically determined how it's going to police our communities, but they're not the people making those decisions weren't of our communities. And so we have to have input, especially those of us who are in law enforcement that are Black, because we see it on both sides. I share with folks that my worst two experiences, if you're a Black man in the United States, you got your experiences with the police. My worst two experiences with the police were both when I was the police, and in both instances, they knew I was the police. And in one of the two instances, I was a chief, and the guy knew I was a chief. And in both instances, they did what they did, and they told me they didn't care who I was, and it didn't matter to them.
Wow.
So those people exist in our profession. They do. And when you go to a police department, I know it doesn't happen in California, but in Illinois, when you go to police departments here, there are people that can tell you, oh yeah, that's just so-and-so. We know about him. But so-and-so is allowed to exist within your police department. The guy who knew I was a chief, when we had our encounter, that guy ended up going to federal prison. Not for what he did to me, but because that's how he treated everybody like that of color. And so if he's treating me like that and he knows I'm a police chief, imagine the things he's doing to the everyday citizen. And it ended up landing him in prison. And at the time when that happened to me, I knew that I was a police chief and I knew the chief. And when I went to him about what happened, he didn't do anything about it. Once again, these folks have been allowed to exist within our profession. So that's why, and I applaud the work that you do, and the voice that you have to do the things that you're doing to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable. And it's not just Black officers. There's a lot of great white officers out there who, for whatever reasons, they are used to the culture that exists. But when we share with them our experiences and we start doing and saying the things that we do, oftentimes they feel empowered. They feel empowered to join in and fight with us because they've never had anybody leading the charge like that. So the things that you're doing, man, are just so important. And I'm so happy that you're doing what you're doing.
I appreciate that. And going back to what I was talking about, my motivation for getting into a department was, I didn't want things to happen, or at least on my watch, that you would see on TV or hear about. And, I don't see these sorts of things in my particular department, but I'm not naive to think that they don't happen. They just haven't happened in front of me. So maybe that's what I'm sort of thinking, that because they know, hey, Peters don't play that, let's not do that in front of him. But these things may still be happening.
That's a great way to start, though.
Right. That's a great way to start,
The fact, if you don't have that as a fundamental thing within your department, people know that there's certain things they can't do in front of you. That means you're doing the right thing. Because we all know that there are folks who look like us that people are feel comfortable doing stuff in front of. And something, and let me get this straight: it ain't just white officers that abuse authority; it's
Yeah,
black officers that
that
do it as
part.
well.
That part. Yeah.
So, but even then, no matter what color you are, the abuse of authority, it's not okay to do it in front of Dale. It's not.
Yep.
That the fact that you have that reputation means that you are doing the right thing, and that speaks volumes.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yeah, because we get our people from the community, so we're just a microcosm of the community. So just like every other profession, we get. I hate to say that term because people overuse it. Bad apples, but there's bad apples. Yeah. There's bad teachers and bad store clerks and lawyers and doctors and everything. So, just to think that we would be above all that, and we should be held to a different standard. But the thing is, a lot of people say is that, yeah, we are a microcosm of the community, but when we get caught doing these things, the punishment isn't the same. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, you know what, the thing that, and you just mentioned it, that us being held to a higher standard, with to whom much is given, much is required.
Yep.
That is, the Bible says that. And what happens is our authority, we literally have the power of life and death in our hands. And yes, there's good, bad, and everything. But when we do wrong things, it can cost somebody their freedom or it can cost them their life. Mm-hmm. So because of that, we absolutely need to be held to a higher standard because there are those that abuse it. And so those who abuse it, you expect that from them. It's not acceptable, but they are who they are. You expect that. What happens so often is just the misuse by folks from a competency standpoint. And when I teach my classes, I talk about a couple different types of bad officers. We have those bad officers that are intentionally doing things wrong. Once again, they are who they are, and we expect that from them because that's who they are. But there's a lot of things that happen because of competency or lack thereof of competency. And once again, and the people who are incompetent are able to hang around even longer because they're not out there deliberately doing things wrong. They're not getting in trouble. They're not breaking the rules, but they're not competent. And their co-workers can tell you who they are.
Yeah.
But because they're not doing stuff to get written up, they're not doing stuff to get fired, that when they get into that life or death situation, their lack of competency causes them to overreact with catastrophic consequences.
Yeah.
A prime example, and folks, talk about they don't want a Monday morning quarterback, but we have to use situations to get better. If you look at, I believe it was Tamir Rice. That's the young man. Matter of fact, Columbus that's where he was at, if I'm not mistaken. The young man that had the fake gun in the park. Well, the call came in that, hey, there's a guy with a gun in the park. Looks like he's a young kid or something. I think it's not a real gun. And understand, I'm not justifying this based on that because we don't wait to find out of something as best you can, but you can't go by face value. But bad tactics can lead to a justified shoot. Well, if you look at that video, you've got officers that pull in front of somebody that's got a gun. They don't know if it's real or not. They pull a squad car right in front of them, and they're forced because of their proximity to this person with a gun to get out and shoot them. That's why they didn't get charged. But I can guarantee, I've never been to the police academy in Ohio, but I can guarantee you that nowhere in the police academy do they ever teach you to pull up in front of somebody in a squad car that has a gun. And so they placed themselves in a situation that legally they were justified in acting. They should have been held responsible for placing themselves in that situation. So competency issue, that's kind of an example of that.
Yeah. Yep. I hear you. We had a little bit of connection problem there for a little bit, but we got the gist of all that. And I appreciate that feedback on that because that's real. I mean, competency, and we see it on across the country from LA to New York. If an officer is not competent and they use bad tactics, and I've spoken a lot about officers not knowing how we as in the black community, how we interact with each other, how we talk to each other. A lot of times, if we're loud, boisterous, and hand gestures and all that, it's not necessarily threatening. So some officers need to realize that and don't overreact in those situations as well. So, just proximity to some of these situations. I talk about with other officers, non-black officers. Do you interact with the black community, with people that aren't the same as you? I don't have a lot of cop friends that I hang out with, just so I can get different perspectives. Do you have that? Do you just hang around other officers 24/7 and that's all you see all the time? So it's good to get different perspectives so that when you're out there, you can interact with people appropriately. All right, so we got Chief Davis back. We had a little technical glitch there, but hey, this is technology. This is what happens when we're all using that bandwidth. So I appreciate
Hazel
you.
Crest Internet.
Yes, I appreciate you coming back here, Chief. Good stuff, good stuff. So, hey, what's your family life like? You married? You got kids? What's your situation?
I am married. I have four adult children and four grandchildren. They all of them are my pride and joys. We are empty nesters, and my granddaughter actually is a senior in high school. She's down in Florida. Actually, 3 out of my 4 grandkids, our oldest daughter, are down in Florida. Florida's grandchild will be 4 this year. So I've got the whole range of them, and I love my kids. My off time, I'm a fanatical boater.
Bowling, huh?
I've been in the boating now.
Boating. Oh, nice.
Boating.
Yeah, nice.
Yes, I'm a fanatical boater. Yeah, so we been into boating about 9 years now. And like I said, we're empty nesters. We parents that played sports, and we actually 2 of our sons were playing college football at the same time, and so during those few years, every weekend we were on the road traveling somewhere to see them play. So we paid our dues, and it's now time for us to sit back and enjoy our lives together. So
yeah,
it's been a blessing. So it's been a blessing.
Any of them thinking about following in Dad's footsteps in law enforcement?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, nobody's. No, not any grandkids. I guess that could happen at some. As far as my kids, absolutely not.
Yeah.
They're on their own paths at this point in time. So
that's good. I mean, that's what we raise them to, take their own paths, and they don't have to follow in our footsteps for so long as they do what they want to do and they do it well. So same thing in my household. So I got a son and a daughter. Yeah, my son wants to go into medicine, and my daughter, she's still a senior in high school, so she'll be applying for colleges. She's hoping to get into Howard, so I hope she gets into Howard. That's going to be a great experience for her. Yeah, great experience for her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Chief, I appreciate everything. You coming on and all that. You have to talk about boating. What is boating real quick? So you guys racing boats? What are you doing?
No. So our boat, so we have 2 boats and 2 jet skis, and we're on Lake Michigan. We're on Lake Michigan, and our larger boat is almost, it's like an apartment basically on the water. We have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, kitchen, direct TV.
Nice.
So when we leave the office on Friday, we headed straight to the marina. We are there for most of the weekend, and in most cases, I'll either come straight to work on Monday morning, or I'll, if I got some stuff, cut the grass and stuff early on Sunday and do those things. But the only challenge is being in Chicago, you only have so many months out of the year in the season. So the season is about to come to an end in a few weeks. But we love it. That's my peaceful place. A lot of people, because of all the hats that I wear, people are like, how the heck do you keep your sanity? Well, that's it. You got to make time for yourself, and I want to make well. Sadly, a young trooper, black trooper, that took his life on Friday.
Yes.
He was at work and took his own life. We don't know why. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of things going on for somebody to be at a point in their own life. Just for his soul and for his family. and just let folks know that are out there in the profession that there's always somebody to talk to. There's always somebody to talk to, and please don't ever think that there's no way out other than taking your life. And there's so many people that do it in our profession every year, and we've just got to look for one another.
Agreed. Can't agree enough on that. All right, Chief. So before I let you go, I got a little question and answer, quick round session I like to play with my guests here. So let me get that for you. This is called
Last night I saw a superhero, he was black. He said, "This is for the street. Black Lightning's back."
All right, so this is called Black Lightning. I'm just gonna throw some quick questions at you. You throw some quick answers back at me, and we'll wrap this up here. So, real quick, what was your favorite assignment?
All right.
Your favorite assignment during your career?
I think I'm doing under-drug buys.
Okay, all right. You like narcs? Yeah, I was a narc for a while. That was a fun, really demanding, time demanding, but yeah, that was really fun. Yeah. Celebrity you'd want to play, a celebrity you'd want to play in a movie of your life.
Ooh, celebrity play a movie of my life.
Who's gonna play Chief Mitchell?
How about Wesley?
Who's that? Wesley?
Wesley Snipes.
Oh yeah. All right. So you do all the backflips and stuff that he does too?
Absolutely not. But no, not at all.
The martial arts, yeah. He got a new one coming out with Kevin Hart that looks pretty good. I want to check that out. I've been seeing on social media they've been posting, so that looks good. I'm happy for him because he did his thing in Coming to America too. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did see it. Yes, he did.
Yeah, he did his thing.
I'm glad to see he's back on his feet.
Yes, indeed. So are you a 9mm guy or a 40 cal guy?
40 cal.
40 cal. Yep. I know a lot of people are switching back to 9mm, but I'm still 40 cal myself. You in the Chicago area, so Bulls or Bears?
Bears. That's not much of a choice at this point, but Bears. Yeah. Justin Fields, Ohio State. So he did his thing yesterday. Yeah.
If you could go back in time and meet somebody who is no longer living, who would it be?
I'd have to say Martin Luther King would be that person.
There you go. Great choice, Martin Luther King. MLK. Two Chicago area musical acts, the Shy-Lights or Earth, Wind and Fire. Which one is you?
I love the Shy-Lights, but EWF.
Yep.
Can't beat them.
Yeah, that was probably an unfair matchup there, but
yeah.
If you could be chief of police anywhere outside of the United States, where would it be?
Outside of the United States.
Yeah, outside.
Outside of the, I'd say my friends in the Bahamas.
There you go. Yes, indeed. What's the coldest outside temperature you've been in? For me out here in SoCal.
Coldest outside temperature I've been in is about 50 below.
Oh no, 50 below? 50?
Yeah, 50 wind chill with the wind chill.
No,
50 below.
Y'all can keep that. I'll be out here when it's 50 degrees out here. We like, oh man, where my coat? Where my winter coat at? Do you use emojis?
You all have winter coats out there?
Yeah, that's my winter coat. It's called a jacket for you, but
okay.
Do you use emojis when you text?
You know what? The only thing I use a couple of them. I use my fraternity sign, and I use a couple others, just the fundamental ones.
Right.
And thumbs up and stuff like that.
All right, cool. A couple more. When's the last time you used your handcuffs?
Wow.
In a professional
I don't even
capacity.
carry handcuffs. That I don't even carry handcuffs. Actually, and it's funny that you asked that. I don't even carry handcuffs. But
well, you shouldn't. But
Friday, I was leaving work on Friday. I was leaving Friday, and I'm leaving town, and an incident broke out right in front of me. And one of my officers was there, and we had a guy taking this guy into custody, and I had to rely on his handcuffs. So you called me on that one. I should be carrying handcuffs.
No, I mean that's why you get paid the big bucks to direct. But you never know. You know, things happen. But hey, you're an admin. You don't need that anymore.
You never know. That's how it was.
Yep. And last one here. Do you have a bucket list?
I do. My bucket list, the main thing on my list is to get to Africa. My wife and I would like to get to go home, go to the motherland, and just see things for myself there, and also go to the Holy Land. Those are bucket list things that I have. Go.
Have you completed anything on the list yet?
You know what? We travel pretty frequently. And I just live a blessed life.
There you go.
You know, I live a blessed life, and I've been so fortunate and so blessed, and I enjoy every moment. They say this is not a dress rehearsal, so I try to live every moment as though, say one day it's gonna be last moment, so live every moment as though it's your last. So,
indeed, that's what's up. All right, Chief, I appreciate that. That was a good conversation. I appreciate everything you said to us out here in the audience on the Black and Blue podcast today. And you be safe out there. You got anything you want to tell my audience on the way out?
I just want to reiterate that it's such an honor to be here, man. And I'm so proud of you and the things that you are doing and the voice that you have out there, that you're being made heard. And I just hope and pray that it expands even more. And if there's anything I can do to help in that process, I'm more than willing to do so. And the folks that tune in and listen to you obviously are great as well. Let's do it as professionals, as law enforcement professionals. We have a responsibility to make sure that our profession is looking after our community. So let's not take that profession lightly. And those who are out there listening, that listen in to Dale Peters and know that he's doing great things, partner with him. From our perspective, as Black folks that are in enforcement, make the changes that we know need to be made in our profession.
Yep. Appreciate that, Chief. All right. You go out there and enjoy whatever left of the good weather that you got out there in Illinois. And
yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got a few weeks.
Yeah. I'll catch you soon. All right. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Honor
to be here.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this episode of the Black and Blue Podcast. I want to thank my guest on today's show, Hazel Crest, Illinois Police Chief Mitchell Davis, for joining me on today's show. If you guys out there enjoyed this episode as well, make sure you like and subscribe to the Black and Blue Podcast YouTube channel or whatever podcast platform you're hearing my golden voice right now. I'll be back in a couple weeks with another interesting guest. Same black time, same black channel. But till then, come on now, you already know, stay black in blue. I'll holler at you. Deuces.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.